We start directly with the second session and with our first poll. We would like to know from all of you what you think about the consumption behavior and what you experienced regarding the consumption behavior since the crisis started. Do you buy more online? Do you buy more local? Both of it? Or did nothing change? We let this poll now for 10 seconds. And then I'm very curious. What's your answer? Okay, I don't see how many voted so far. Jörg, how does it look like?
The responses are coming in, so please continue going. This is great. I see responses coming in. So
I would say I hand it now over to Yves and Alea to introduce themselves, and then we have the poll response after the introduction.
Thank you, Alex and Dirk, for organizing this. I'm Yves van Varenberg. Most of you probably don't know me. I'm the department chair of the marketing department, and I was very happy when Dirk and Alex reached out with this idea. I hope all of you are doing well, that none of you or your family members have serious health issues, because that's most important. We got the invitation to talk about marketing after Corona. When we were thinking about it, we need to think about two things. On the one hand, you have the long-term effects, long-term consequences of a changing environment. But on the other hand, you have the short-term consequences of a lockdown, of being faced with a pandemic, and all that stuff. So we were thinking about discussing both of them, beginning with the short term. So how do people react to having fear of being contaminated? So overall, what we know from research is that people have kind of a behavioral immune system. So whenever in our mind fear of contamination is activated, then we engage in a number of reactions and a number of behavioral responses that actually prevent us from getting infected. So it's kind of a natural system, a system that evolved over time in human beings. And on the one hand, you have social reactions. So people become more socially distant, have less trust in others, are more introverted, which creates a number of challenges for marketers on the one hand. But you also have consumer reactions. We are less likely to buy products that have a dent in it, for example, or that are misplaced in the store. We have a higher willingness to pay for cleaning actions. We know that consumer choice is going to change when people have these contamination concerns in mind. And usually these concerns are triggered by a lot of different cues. Could be related to who else is around. If you see someone who looks dirty, who smells dirty, you have this contamination concern that is activated and that triggers you into these reactions. Right now, what we're facing is that these are nearly constantly activated. So we have a situation that never really happened before to most of us. And that will affect our choices. That will affect how we behave. For example, what we know from research is that people are less likely to travel to exotic locations when these contamination concerns are activated. They're less likely to trust local brands, to trust local service providers, because global service providers or global brands are just a little bit less trustworthy. So we have these reactions. We know that this triggers people to engage in a certain behavior. And that's what we see. People become selfish. They become very self-oriented. So we had a major rush on supermarkets in first instance, where there's an overconsumption of toilet paper. For God's sake, nobody knows why, but this happens, and why toilet paper specifically. But what happens in this case is that for marketers, this really highlights pain points in the system. What marketers can do during this crisis is two approaches. Customers are facing a lot of problems right now, a lot of practical problems. So one is to really resolve those. The second one is the human touch. We all got lost of the human touch. We're all longing for some social contact, but we cannot do that. And we can only do it online. So especially when interacting with organizations, we can do it online. So we need to add a human touch somehow. So I brought some examples with me about how organizations are doing this.
Maybe this is a good time,
Yeah.
by the way, to
Okay.
share the poll results about buying local, because you were just talking about that and about
Yeah.
buying online. So I don't know how this is visible to you now. Normally, I should be sharing the results. So buy more local, 11%. Buy more online, also 11%. Buy more local and online, 19%, and 38% says that they buy as before. There's no change.
Which might be due to the student population, because what we're seeing in the general population is that there's more online buying. Amazon's founder, Jeff Bezos, is becoming extremely rich during this crisis, especially because people move more towards the online buying. But apparently, most students have access to their regular channels, which is good, by the way. So that's nice to see. So solving customer problems is one issue that needs to be addressed. It's on the next slide.
Can it be that we students already use the modern technology and online buying behavior a lot, and therefore don't change so much?
Actually, if you don't mind my opinion, I think the student budget hasn't changed in the last 2 months. So buying more isn't going to happen.
Yeah, buying more is not happen, but we also don't shift to buying more online because we were already consuming a fair amount of online products, and therefore we don't change something in average. So do we see a bigger change in the broad range of consumers, which are going now maybe more online, as Eve said?
Yeah.
But because we are a small fraction, we don't change so much. That was
it could be. Could be. It's interesting to find out.
It's also that we're also shifting to different products than we would normally consume, like how many people rushing out to buy a green screen or a ring light for their webcasting, which they don't have at home. So they're having to go to specialists, which are online.
Mm-hmm. Point. Then we start the second part before we go to the next slide. It is about the human interaction. And we would like to know from you, do you think that a virtual human interaction or a digital way can be equal to the good old personal human interaction? I directly go to the next slide to give the context.
So what we're seeing is that, well, on the one hand, you have solving customers' problems is the big theme here. And concerns of being contaminated are very visible. This is a picture on the left-hand side that I took in the elevator at our Leuven campus, which was just before the lockdown. So that's a problem that we need to solve. Banks, for example, now face a lot of customers that are out of job, even temporarily, that have problems with paying back their loans. So they're deferring mortgages. But quite interesting, quite fascinating is that a lot of organizations are experimenting with technology within the store, because technology cannot spread germs that much or cannot spread pathogens that much. So they're more and more using technology more and more. So this is an example of the Pepper robot, which is probably familiar to most of you, that is being used in one of the German supermarkets. So the poll question is, do you think this is a good idea or not?
I seem to have some issues with the polling.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry
then we
that.
continue.
I think I have to abandon the polling for a second.
Okay.
Sorry.
So it's about it's about resolving small issues from customers, and we really need to understand what customers are facing. So there's a really important role for marketers in that regard, because usually they're the ones that are the most connected to the customer within the organization. So it's up to them to reach out to the customer and really step up and engage with customers to figure out, okay, what can we do for you? Because this is a big crisis, and if we understand people's concerns, if we understand customers' concerns, and we can adapt to that, and when we can make our offerings better, or we can make our service better, then we gain the trust of the customer, because then they know, okay, this is a company that we can rely on. One issue that I see with online delivery nowadays, we don't know where the driver has touched the box. So one of the big concerns that people have when these contamination concerns are activated is that they have a fear of touching something that someone else has touched before. So why not create a box that clearly indicates where the driver can touch it and where the customer can touch it? With all these small details that can be changed, all these small details that can be added to the service offering or to the product offering, that we can adapt to what the customer is facing right now. So this is just a small example. Think about all those details that you can improve and all these details that you can change in order to help the customer go through the situation. So how can we connect emotionally? We know from research that people are loyal to organizations not just because of functional reasons, but also because of social reasons, because they want to have contact with the store employee, they want to have contact with the service provider, they might have a friendship with that person. So how can we add that human interaction, that human touch to a distant channel like the online chat? And what we know is that handwriting works quite a lot. And this is something that my colleague received a couple of days ago. Hey, thank you for your order and this way also for your support. Hashtag keep on running, but solo. So stay safe. In a way, it's adapting to that customer's problem of not having social contact. Someone did the effort to write this message and put it in the box together with the shoes. This is a small effort. It costs the organization some money, but this is immediately shared. My colleagues sent it immediately to me and I showed it to other people as well. So that person knows, okay, Runner's Lab is taking care of me. bpost launched an app in which people can send a free postcard. We are not only deprived from social contacts with store employees, but also with our relatives. So they're helping people connecting with their relatives, with their friends again, by allowing people to send free postcards. And within a couple of days, they sent about 500,000 postcards, and they really had to shut the app down because the app was too large, which is another problem from the organization side. On the right-hand side, stay home Proximus. So maybe you noticed it, but this is a way of connecting as well. We are caring about you. We want you to be safe. We want you to take care of yourself. So stay home. It's a small detail that is changed in the service offering, in the product offering, but that can have a lot of meaning if it's picked up. What we're facing nowadays is also a very nice real-life experiment because it shows the functionality of the stores. What is the function of the store in a world that is becoming increasingly online, increasingly digital? And nowadays we see that many customers are moving towards the online channels, which creates some problems for the traditional stores. Like, what is our function if everybody's shopping online and suddenly notices that shopping online usually goes quite smoothly, quite seamlessly? So what is the function of the store? And in this case, it's a trend that is going on for a couple of years already. We know that stores are not only functional. As I mentioned earlier, it's about that social contact. It's about having that nice experience. It's about the ability to touch products and play around with it. Is the big difference with a traditional, with an online channel. What we're seeing is more hybrid offerings nowadays, where organizations offer both an offline and online offering, but that offline offering needs to focus more on the customer experience and needs to think about that social aspect. Stores are often third places where people meet, like a Starbucks store. This might be exacerbated by this whole crisis, and I think that we suddenly realize or some people at least realize how much they like going to the store. So this is an important question that we will have, or that we will have to follow up on in the future, is how did the function of the store change because of this crisis, because of the fact that everybody suddenly went digital, went online channel, and suddenly we have to think about rebranding, refurbishing these stores in order to make them more, emotional and more about the experience. There's a new poll coming up.
I will open this poll up, so let's go for this one. The question here is, and this was one that you suggested, right? So in the context of the crisis, do you think the budgets of marketing are going to go up, down, or are they going to be cut? Are they going to be kept equal, or are they going to be increased according to the audience? So that poll is rolling right now.
Okay, then we let the poll run a little bit before we move to the next slide. So if I reflect on what you said so far, we get somehow more personal, more closer to the customer, even with the bigger distance, as it seems. So we cannot contact the customer anymore directly, but quiet by technology, we have the ability to get closer as ever before, only we never did it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, this is really a time for companies to step up and show that they really care about their customers. I know one organization that was calling their customers over 70 years old, just because they know that these people are lonely, these people might have very challenging circumstances. And the company contacted them, they called them to ask whether everything was okay. Not to sell something, not to make promotions or whatever, just a simple question, are you okay? Is there something that we can help you with? So this organization really flipped it. That's something that you will remember forever, right? It's just a matter of creating that emotional connection, understanding what customers' problems are at this point in time. And loneliness is a big problem for a lot of people right now. People with younger children, they go crazy, including myself. But older people might become very lonely because they are deprived from social contacts with other people. So in this case, it's a way of establishing a relationship and showing that you care about the customer and not only caring about the customer's money.
Mm.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's really nice. It's a good shift. It shows that there is more than just making a fixed dollar. But
unfortunately, many companies are not in that stage. They cannot do that because they're too product oriented, because they're too sales oriented. All right, here are the results.
How are they?
Yeah, so the results are 24% of the respondents say that the budgets are going to be cut. 5% says kept equal, and 38% thinks they will increase.
It shows how intelligent our students are. If we think about the long term, what's going to change, we need to think about the fact that we have a recession coming up. It's very clear that the economy will slow down. We have a recession. And, well, budgets are cut everywhere. Our students are more intelligent than traditional marketers or traditional companies, which is a good sign for the future. But most of the organizations cut their marketing budget. They cut their marketing budget because it's very hard to show a return on marketing. It's very easy for a finance department how much money they saved. It's very easy for an operations department to show how much money they saved. When they ask marketers that question, how much money did you gain in returns? Very often, our brand awareness increased and our brand satisfaction increased and our brand loyalty increased, but it's very hard to show the return on marketing in financial terms. We have ways to do that, so we develop those models, but most organizations don't adapt that. So the marketing budget is typically the budget that is cut as one of the first budgets. That's a very bad thing to do. We have studies showing over and over again that the organizations that really increase their marketing budget during a recession, during a crisis, are actually the ones that are better off after the crisis because they gained market share, because they gained more customers, more loyal customers. And in a way, it's logic because if the intuition says cut the marketing budget, it means that a lot of organizations are doing this. So if you have the means to increase the marketing budget, then you have more ability to gain more market share or to sell more products. The general recommendation is really to at least keep the marketing budget equal or increase it. At the same time, what we see is that the budget for sales is typically going up. More and more organizations invest in sales because it generates a short-term return, and it's very visible what the return is. So marketing budgets are cut, and marketing budgets are typically something that you use for a long-term perspective. Sales budgets are typically increased. So we need to be very careful as marketers that what the sales is promising and what the sales is doing, that it can be met by the rest of the organization. So again, that's an important role for marketers, that they keep awareness of the customer, being customer oriented. So that's a general recommendation. If you, as an organization, if you can increase the marketing budget during a recession, nearly all studies show that you're better off after the recession.
Is it in this recession maybe even especially needed because it is affecting the consumer behavior so much? So compared to 2008, would you say now even more, it's more important to increase the marketing budget? Or can it be generally said each recession?
It's very hard to tell because the origin of the recession is different, but the consequences are not. And the consequences are typically unemployment, people buying more private labels and less real brands. The consequences are about the same, except for the fear of contamination, where we need to do a lot more stuff, which is Alea talk about. But I think that it's about the same in every recession. But,
okay.
Yeah, again, afterwards we will know whether it was right or not.
That's a good point. Then we switch directly to Alea.
Okay, can you all hear me? Yes, no?
Perfect.
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay, for those of you who have not had the pleasure, my name's Alea Fairchild. I'm a techno geek and a business process junkie. I've written a recent blog post on something called the contactless economy. My colleagues at the Board of Innovation have written something on the low-touch economy, looking at how our behavior and this whole shift in this corona crisis has really impacted a number of things. And to go back to the previous discussion, in terms of times of recession, it impacts liquidity. Not only what's available to spend, how it's spent, but prioritization of how it's spent. So the shifts we're going to see are going to happen on a lot of fronts, and Eve covered some of the ones on human behavior. I saw a great presentation 2 days ago called Beyond Soap. By the way, I hope you've all washed your phone sometime this week. Just saying. Okay. But I'm going to look specifically at what kinds of underlying technologies, what kinds of dynamics are going to change, and it gives us a chance to remake a lot of different aspects of the economy that perhaps from a process perspective no longer work or haven't worked very well. And to look at some of the consequences of this recession, as Eve was talking about, there are certain characteristics of industries, and I've circled the ones that are more physical, that it requires a large number of people to get together, we have to be close together, there has to be some perception of hygiene, and there's a dependence on people having to move. And all of those things are going to shift. And if you look at the industries on the left, again, this comes from the Board of Innovation, so I'm giving them the appropriate credit. You're going to look at things that we are used to consuming in certain ways are going to change. And this is, and there's a couple points I want to make. First of all, we're going to see disintermediation. So all those lovely retail brands, channels, ways to get are going to go away because functionally they don't work for us right now. Let's go back to the toilet paper issue. We discussed this in class. Why were people hoarding toilet paper? Think about this. Where do you spend most of your day prior to this? It's not home. You spend it in a restaurant or a hotel or your workplace or school. So you don't think, oh, how much toilet paper do I go through a day? And the problem with the toilet paper industry is they make commercial form factors for toilet paper. 75%, this is just a rough estimate, of their output is for institutional and commercial organizations. Those big rolls you see at the university in the big cans, that's not for home use for a variety of reasons. All of a sudden, pivot and shift in one weekend, now everyone has to go to the toilet at home. But the paper is not made for home. So the intermediaries who actually create the form factors had to quickly scramble and figure out, well, we have the paper. Paper's not hard to make, but the distribution of the paper, which traditionally has gone to the university, the hospital, whatever, now has to go to the retail channel. And the packaging had to change very quickly. So a lot of things had to shift, non-food, for example, because all of a sudden now how it was going to be delivered and the whole logistics shifted completely. So now if you go to a Carrefour, this is the funny part, you can find toilet paper, but it's basically one brand. They've bulk bought mainly from one brand. So the pivot all of us had to do in about a week's time, whether it be education, any form of consumption of anything, okay, including entertainment, interaction, had to shift. And we had to sit back and think, some people would panic. How do I acquire whatever that is? So how do I see my friends? Okay, I'm on Zoom. How do I interact with my colleagues? Okay, I'm on Skype for Business. How do I get soap? How do I get a face mask? I got face masks in the mails from friends. People were making face masks and mailing them to each other. Fortunately, the Post Service, they also had to change their process. Now, if you want to get something and it was actually registered, now you don't sign for it anymore. You just show your face nearby, social distancing, and the postman says, okay, I got it, thank you, and they'll sign on your behalf. So we really changed processes completely. Some organizations, if you think about the footprint, can't do that easily because the way they've spent their assets, tourism, hospitality, sports arena, have been around physical presence. So now we're shifting logistically to a new process. How do we do that? We talked about this in class. Kentucky Fried Chicken in China, now when you order KFC, you get a little label with the food, which is, by the way, left at a distance. The person delivering it leaves it and steps back and lets you get it. And on that label is the temperature of the person who made your food and the temperature of the person who's delivering your food. So the poll question we were going to ask basically is the level of comfort you would acquire with this level of information. There's a damaged trust issue. For example, am I going to be ordering face masks from China? Now, I've tried twice, and both times they haven't arrived. I ended up, the students know this story, I ended up getting face masks from New Zealand from a friend of mine who's the CEO of an outdoors company, and they pivoted in one weekend from making outdoors clothing to only making face masks. And I supported their initiative by ordering 2 face masks from them, because I've known him a long time. And it's a very hysterical story how I got the face masks. I finally got them, this last Monday. DHL Express, again, arrived at my doorstep, social distancing, signed on my behalf, and I got my face masks. But people are very concerned, not only from a packaging perspective of where the person's touched it, but the whole production process of, well, how was this made, who made it, were they healthy? So as we're talking about tracing and all these issues of information sharing, we're also going to have to focus on cleaning. Going beyond soap, what level of hygiene are you going to have? I was on a hackathon, which we'll see some slides a little bit later this week, looking at hospitality and how hotels are going to remake themselves process-wise. And one of the conversations that came up was housekeeping. When I go into a room, normally people, when they stay in a hotel room, they touch a lot of things. The TV remote, the light switches, etc. And every day, how much cleaning does the housekeeping service have to do? And one of the suggestions I made, instead of coming in to find a made bed, you come in to find bedding sealed hygienically, letting you know the temperature of the person who's washed it, etc., that you can make your own bed. And then somebody said, what about the pillows? What about the curtains? Okay, it gets really funky. And one of the things we're thinking about from a process change is a certification body that certifies a certain level of cleanliness. So from a marketing perspective, that I know if I'm a member of, ipso facto whatever, that creates a certification that Hilton hotel has a certain level of cleanliness, that will build a hygiene preference for certain locations and certain levels of hospitality that have a certain hygiene star. So people might be rating the hygiene of different institutions and different places as to how natural and clean they are. I'm using the word natural. You also might find that you're getting people using more green products, more natural products, more eco-friendly products, as we're totally rethinking the processes of how we present ourselves hygienically. Okay, so what we're seeing now is a lot of other companies had to pivot and starting to not only do home delivery for everything. My brother-in-law is a wizard. At the moment, he stays up till 1 o'clock in the morning in California trying to find food delivery slots, and then he starts negotiating with wholesalers for bulk food. I think he has sort of a caveman instinct that he's trying to do some hunkering down. He bought a gigantic salmon, and with a hacksaw, chopped it into pieces that could go in the freezer. So these poor wholesalers, who traditionally go to market through a channel, wholesale, retail, etc., there's no customers anymore. Everything's closed from the commercial side. They still have food to offer. There's still a supply chain. And so they now have to go direct to the consumer. So they really have to switch the whole channel intermediation And even Heinz, you're seeing in the UK, Heinz has something called Heinz to Home that you can buy directly from Heinz, the manufacturer, cans of baked beans. And they will deliver packaged sets of baked beans and tomato sauce to UK consumers directly from the manufacturer, cutting out the entire middleman. The nice part about that, from a big data perspective, is now Heinz knows exactly who consumes their products. They know demographic information, they know psychographic information, so they're optimizing their supply chain. They're realizing now, with toilet paper, etc., how do I rationalize all these levels of intermediation I've had before in the value chain? I don't need all of them. I don't need to have 27 different outlets if I can either go direct or have centralization. So now a lot of restaurants saying, okay, I can't have a restaurant, but I can do takeaway. I can deliver. Or as you'll see in another slide I have coming up, I can remake the process of what I'm offering to the consumer so they don't have the dining experience anymore. And I'm sorry, Eve, I know you like the experience aspect of service. Experiences will be going away right now. Not permanently, but the kind of experience we have changes completely. I've been going to concerts every night. I can now go to parks I could never physically get to and have guided tours of parks. The Flemish Tourist Board now is trying to create a whole marketing campaign about local tourism. Okay, now you can't travel anymore. Now you can't get on a plane and go somewhere. Let's recreate the concept of an experience locally. I know some people are even looking at going to hotel rooms just to get away from their 2- and 4-year-old kids to have an evening alone with a bathtub and a television set and nobody else sharing the internet. Sorry, Eve, is that a good idea?
That's a nice suggestion. I absolutely agree, and I think now is the time to really rethink the function of the intermediary. Because the functional aspect is gone, and some of the experience aspects are gone.
Sure.
So what is left? So those are the social aspects and the hedonic aspects. So
it's going to get out. It basically is changing the process.
Oh, I would like to ask one question in between. In a podcast a few days ago, they were discussing about, yes, the consent is right because of the social distancing. Our normal human behavior can be inferred that we go back to our old habits as soon as it's possible. So even that we are now used to watch Netflix online, as soon as lockdown is over, we would go to cinema again. Do you believe in that in general?
I believe we're going to remake cinema, and that's what I want to get to. We are remaking the footprint. If you look at commercial office buildings, we had an office meeting this morning. A lot of people want to get back to an office and see people again. But from a social distancing perspective, that might not be feasible for some of the office spaces. Okay, so we might find, for example, commercial buildings turn into restaurants because restaurants need more space now to be a restaurant. So the footprint they currently have doesn't work. Or, as we talked about in class, you might have ghost kitchens where the kitchen that's there is for several restaurants. So the takeaway orders, if you want to have something special from another country that doesn't normally have, they can enter a marketplace, and instead of opening different retail chains everywhere, they can just centralize in one location and then start shipping product out from there via Uber Eats, via Deliveroo. They don't have to open up that whole infrastructure, that whole intermediation.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we're stepping back. Hang on a second. We're stepping back and saying, okay, let's optimize, let's rationalize how we actually do the process.
If I may add something in the meantime, we stay human beings, so we stay social beings. So we're a social animal, and we rely on habit quite a lot. So I fully agree with the experts saying that the world is going to change, but very often I disagree with the amount of change that will happen. And I think now is the time to really rethink everything.
Sure.
Like, what do we want to keep in that social? How do we want to feed that social animal while also feeding those other aspects?
We also realize something important. We don't want to commute anymore. We don't want to spend a lot of time in our cars. We don't want to spend a lot of time in crowds of people we're not comfortable in. So we're rethinking some of these processes, and to the benefit of not only society, but the environment. Like, I might not want to hop on the public bus anymore. I might want to use a bike instead. So we're starting to rethink, do I need to have all of these previous processes, yes or no? I'm not saying we're going to go away. There's no new normal. I'm calling it the new abnormal. Okay, there's no new normal. We're rationalizing what we have to do. And in part of doing that, and you can see the university's been going through this as well, we're looking at our processes, how we communicate, how transparent we are, how we rationalize the decisions we're making. And that's part of our marketing.
And here I would like to ask Eve directly, do you think we can drift back to our old habit? Right now we think like, oh, I don't like to commute a lot, like you said, Alea, and I really enjoy to stay at home because the time is much more valuable. We make a Zoom meeting instead of going to the university. But Eve, do you think we could drift back to our old habits as soon as it's possible again after some months?
Well, never underestimate the power of habit. Habit is very strong. That's what we see in every change effort, is that it's always very challenging because people have their habits. So yes, for some, I think we will go back to some extent, but I think we will go back to the good things. What do you like
most? We're going to rationalize what the good things actually are.
Yeah. What do you like most? Do you like teaching via a WebEx or like teaching in class? Where you can see the other students, where you can have the interaction, where you can see the facial expressions better and so on. Where it's easier to ask direct questions or have that direct interaction. So I think we're going to keep part of the old life, and we're going to really carefully reflect upon the good things of the old life. But we're going to, on the other hand, going to think about rationalizing our current approaches or our old approaches and go to the new abnormal, as Alea said. But hopefully that in the end we get something better.
True. I also want to echo Eve's current comment about spending on marketing. Also spending on R&D. Is now the time to spend on technology? I would say yes, but also technology that's going to improve the process. And the reason I wrote that paper about the contactless economy is this object we have, we know, we trust it's in our hands most times. We know where it's been. I might go back to the office. We had a discussion this morning, does the copy machine work? I might not want to touch the copy machine, but I can actually order my copies using my phone. I can open my door using my phone. I can go to the coffee machine and get a coffee using my phone. We might start changing the technology that allows us to do processes for better control, for better hygiene, but also for better protocols. We might have increased cybersecurity because now things have to be done with things are authorized devices versus someone who can accidentally come in and do something. So we have actually a better oversight from the point of data. We might have too much data. But in doing that, we can also create better communication. And actually creates better marketing.
Adding to that, this is the first pandemic that is really documented that well. We get updates every day about the number of cases, the number of fatalities, unfortunately. But at one point in time, we will accept that there are people suffering from corona because we learn to live with the flu, which is causing a lot of fatalities. Once we accept that, then we might change that in some regard, and I can't believe that will happen. Alea disagrees, which I like.
Actually, I like the direction of discussion. By the way, for the audience, we spoke to Alea and Eve before, and we can overtake the time 15 minutes, and I think we definitely take this opportunity to take 15 minutes longer. Dirk, do we have responses of the poll regarding the
medical records? So the question was, would you be more inclined to do business with someone from whom you had their medical records or any info about their medical records or their medical status? And so overwhelmingly, I would say the response is yes. So we've got 46% people saying yes, 16% no, and then 38% no answer. But yeah, so from those who answered, there's 3 times as much people saying yes than.
Really good. We will directly follow with the talk. I would only like to let you make one more poll, Dirk, because I would like to know from the students the current way of lecturing online instead of offline. Do you like it? Do you don't like it? Or are you neutral? So is it better? Is it worse, or are you neutral? I would like to hear this question till the end, and then we continue with the last slides of Alea.
Okay, I will prepare the poll and I will send it out by the end. Okay.
Thank you.
So the last point I was talking about communication, and one point I also wanted to make is the whole process, the whole value chain of this, in terms of marketing. One of the best sources of marketing are employees, and this whole human engagement of what employees can and can't do for their customers. Right now, there's a number of companies, who won't mention names, who are thinking about profits instead of their employees and how they're responding to this. And you're seeing other companies just stepping up and changing and pivoting not only what they do, but how they communicate with their employees, and making the employee very proud to be working where they're working right now. But we're seeing in this whole rebuild of the process, thinking about what form factor am I going to actually offer my services to. Let's say, for example, I cannot go out to eat right now. By the way, Friday night I have a dining engagement with my colleagues. We all bring our food together at 6:30 and just eat in front of a Zoom window and just talk like you'd have a semi-family virtual dinner. But right now we're all comparing food. What can you get away with? Some people want to actually have a kit that they can actually do their shopping and they have all the right spices, etc. This never took off previously. But a lot of people now are putting a lot more time and effort in what they eat. It's one good thing for us. We're getting healthier or eating more chocolate, depending on who you are. And you're starting to see now stores are thinking, okay, in what form factor can I offer what was an experience, and now it's a solution. It might be kiosks. So I see where there's a need for food, and I have the equivalent of a food truck or a cart. And I'm thinking about, you're all hopefully thinking as well, the Wolf market that just opened near us prior to this whole thing occurring. Now, how can they repurpose that? Can you actually have people in an area like that in the food market? Or can you change this to have parts of it more portable, that they could be based out of Wolf, but they can go to other sections of the area and offer food in a socially distant manner? Or can I have fine dining catered at home? The restaurants who can't be open right now, who are upscale, are thinking about, how do I make the experience different in somebody's house in terms of a dining party within a family who's in quarantine? So if you're going to deliver, if you're going to have intermediation, what is that value process looking at now going forward? And I think there's going to be a lot of centralization. We discussed this in class, where the actual resources are centralized to avoid these pivot points we had in the process for logistics. But then we're going to change process and the outcome of what you actually get. So I might do the same drive-through for Quick, McDonald's, and Burger King. Okay, same facility. More and more stores might end up closing, but then I centralize. In essence, I just specify what I want. I get a mixed menu, because in essence, they perhaps might get together and share a footprint. We're looking at the assets that have been used. The commercial real estate, the hotel, the restaurant, the museum. What can we do with them now? How can we repurpose this to create a value-added experience with social distancing and hygiene that still meets the need of what we want? And how is that going to actually change where intermediaries play a part in creating value? Well, this is across a number of industries, but some industries are going to be hit a lot more than others. It's going to be a matter of how they reutilize their assets and how they repurpose them for as I said, a new abnormal. Some of us will run a rush to an airplane, and some of us will take quite a long time before we get on an airplane again. What does that mean for the airline industry? What does that mean for sports arenas? How do they repurpose? Someone was asking the question about movie theaters, and you'll see some of the examples in countries where they have deluxe movie theaters. It's almost like sitting in your bedroom, and there's like two seats together, like a small bed, and then you have another 3 steps up before the next one. It's sort of a luxury gourmet equivalent of sitting in your bedroom watching a movie. We may have to change these form factors to suit purpose, whatever the purpose might be. I think that was my last slide. Let's have a look. Okay. And I think at this point, gentlemen, is this where you actually open it up to questions of the audience, or did we have one more poll that you're running, Alex?
And before we will run parallel to the open questions, first of all, I want to say thank you very much already to both of you. It was very interesting. And now we directly go to the questions to not lose any more time. Go to the first question. It is about how can companies, the question is from Maxime, how can companies still rely on human interaction get their message across and promote the need for their product service?
I don't think influencer marketing has gone away. We're still more reliant on people that we find trustworthy to share their interactions. And you're seeing a lot more engagement of both normal folks and also celebrities, or people who we consider celebrities who may not have been celebrities before. I'm thinking in the UK, Captain Tom Moore, people who've become celebrities from this that are making things more interactive. Eve, do you want to add?
Well, human interaction is always necessary, or a human touch at least is always necessary. And I see a lot of advertisements and a lot of promotions that are not good and that are not enough focused on the customer. What does the customer need? How can we help the customer? And it's too much focused on the product itself. So I think for organizations, it's really about making that switch and thinking about, maybe understanding the customer better than we ever understood him or her before. And that's a major challenge that organizations face. And
I think we need to actively listen. That's the point.
Absolutely. In terms of that human touch, I've shown that example of that handwriting, that note with handwriting on it. That's a way to do it. Reaching out to the customer, asking whether everything is okay. That's a way of doing it. And that might generate much more word of mouth than any advertisement campaign can.
And true, my husband, who just had his birthday this last Monday, he's been on one of those telesecures that you press the button if you fall kind of thing. They called him on his birthday just to make sure he was okay, to wish him a happy birthday, to see how it was going. Doesn't cost him anything for a phone call. It reinforces good service.
This is something so nice what I observe in this crisis or since the corona situation. And I always wonder, the companies always had the potential. And I believe there were people in the company which were telling for many years, why don't we do that? Why don't we care more about the customer? Why don't we write a personal thank you note? I could imagine they were ignored for a very long time by the top management. I don't know, it's open for discussion. And now finally, because of the crisis, the ears are very, very open for new ideas.
Because the answer is very easy, because they didn't have to. Because they didn't have to. It's a combination of several influences. What we're seeing right now is that the age of branding is a little bit over. The effectiveness of branding. Branding is still very, very important. It's super important. But branding alone will not create a competitive advantage anymore. It's also about how you do it after the branding, after you manage to convince a customer to buy a product or a service. That was an evolution that we already saw before Corona. And Corona only...
I'm going to slightly disagree, but even I occasionally slightly disagree. We live with it.
We're happy about it.
Yeah, I use this example of this outdoor company in New Zealand. Not only did they pivot on a weekend, they basically changed their brand story. Well, they had a brand story to work from in the first place. They basically turned around and said, look, it's important to us that we serve our customers, but also we take care of our employees. So they had somebody making face masks who was self-isolating. Mm-hmm. And they had a great brand story about how their customers' employees came first. And that really pivoted them around in the eyes of their customers to say, hey, not only do you really care about us, but you also really care about the people who work for you. I
don't think we're disagreeing.
Yeah.
I think that...
From a different angle.
I think it's what you're promising is no longer enough. It's what you're doing, what you're showing, whether you really care about customers. That was a trend that was already going on for a long time.
Sure, you build on your brand equity or you destroy it. Yeah, and from that perspective as well, that brands are recognized for what contributions, or somebody put it on Twitter, when we all get back in the new normal, people are going to remember which brands stepped up and which brands didn't.
Yeah.
Exactly. By the way, the poll results are out now as well, so also here quite clear responses. So we had 3 people saying that they prefer the online classes and 15 people saying that they prefer.
Is it possible to list in the chat why?
I think I know why. I've had discussions with students on this. They like the concept of having structure. that they have to be somebody at a certain time and have to do things at a certain time. And if we do asynchronous lectures that they can listen to anytime, they don't do it. We kind of, we had this discussion earlier today, and I have to say this to you folks. We have to change how we teach, but you also have to change how you learn. And the question is, what level of agility do we all have in these respective activities? What tools, what processes, how do we want to go about things? And people who have the level of dedication on both sides, by the way, to make this happen are the ones who are benefiting. And there's a lot of folks who don't have that level of dedication, again, on both sides, that are a bit lost as to what am I supposed to do here. There's no rules, there's no template for this. And it comes down to brands as well. How agile can you be? Can you turn this around over a weekend and start teaching your entire lectures, everything digitally on Monday? That's what we were asked to do, basically. And students were also, okay, now wherever you are, that's where you're going to learn. Hang on a second. I just have my phone. What do? My laptop was stolen. I've had students having some real infrastructural issues, which we've also seen in the marketplace. I only sell to the industrial market, and all of a sudden now I have to make toilet paper for mom and dad. Or, you know, we sell large slabs of fish, and nobody wants large slabs of fish anymore. Retool, flip it around. The question is, why haven't we asked why before? Why haven't we done these things before? If you ask why long enough, finally somebody gives you an explanation. We haven't been asking why enough as to why haven't we changed? Why don't we do it this way? Now we don't have a lot of options. We have to do something different. People are more open to possibilities that they were before.
Yeah, it's a very old quote, but never waste a good crisis. There needs to be a sense of urgency in order to make some changes. And let's hope that this is a good change for marketers. Marketers realized that they had to change something before the corona. The quality level of marketers that we have nowadays is way too low. It's way too much executional. It's too transactional, and they're not thinking strategically and not thinking about the long term. Suddenly you have a crisis where the traditional way of working is not working anymore and where you need to think strategically. So that's a really important push to those companies to make changes.
Not only the companies, but the countries.
And
We're finding that we can't get the products we need in the right country because the companies who need to make them were not incentivized properly to do it locally. Yeah. So we relied on other, macroeconomics, we relied on other countries with cheaper labor or lesser quality of product to make whatever it was because we didn't believe it was important. And now you need gowns and masks and PPE, and a lot of local companies and countries are being incentivized to turn around their production to make something else that was not the core competency of the business. And then I think right now countries need to take stock as to how are we educating people, how are we incentivizing people to make things that this country needs. She says with her American accent. That you have to look for the point of view of why do we educate, why do we invest for regional society, for regional economies? What is it we need to be making here that we're not currently making here?
Mm-hmm. The long-term effect is so extreme. I directly come to the next question of Frederick because it also goes in this direction. Companies are advised to adapt their brand marketing strategies. In your opinion, will there be a shift in brand equity and which sectors are most sensitive?
Yes, there will be a shift in brand equity. There are a lot of sectors that are facing problems, and traditional retail, they are suffering because they need to compete with the online retail. Has so much more experience in it. The offline retailers often treated online retail as something in addition, right? And online retail nowadays is the core. It's the most important activity, I guess.
There's a different element here. Online retail and logistics. I can order online, but if I can't get it.
And they're struggling with that. And I know situations from companies where you order something and you get a message, okay, we will deliver it in 6 weeks from now. Because they have this problem with logistics, they have this problem with internal communication. And suddenly this is, the next time as a customer that you're ordering something online, will you go for this supermarket or this retailer? or one of the traditional online retailers that get it in 1 or 2 days.
And that's data transparency. Yeah, can they tell you what they're going to be able to do? And if they've looked at their value chain and their partnerships and their inventory and they've got a clear view, they can be really honest and say, you order it now, you'll have it in 23:59 tonight. You're looking at the Bowl.com and the Cool Blues and the people who can see into their supply chain and see what they can and can't do. The point I was making on the side of that is if you have more local sources, then you at least know I can get that product tomorrow because it's being manufactured in Belgium or manufactured in Holland. And we've had a very good global marketplace for a long time, best of everywhere, but we can't get best of everywhere in one location anymore. So you really have to rethink not only what you're doing as a brand, but where you're making it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's the global shift of the value chain. It is so immense, and I love the long-term effect especially. I would like to go to the last question from Ardi. And of course, like from our talk before, Alea, the answer is definitely on you. It is about the production of crab meat in cans, and Audi is
observing the address so we can deliver. That's what I want to know, basically.
The most important, Audi, please deliver to Alea. And Audi noticed he has a company for crab meat. He's one of our student colleagues, and several markets like Ukraine, Russia are increasing their demand. And where is the final question? Is this trend temporarily, or is this a starting of a whole new trend driven by new customer behaviors?
Combination. It's new customer behavior. Again, they're looking at their entire portfolio of what they're doing, and they're really realizing what's important, what they can't get, and what they want. I know I'm a food merchandising major from way back when I'm looking at the possibilities of what I can and can't get right now, and I'm rationalizing. But if you don't believe, and this is the opposite point, if you don't believe your local economy is going to be able to create that product anymore, so you're worried about local industry, you're going to start looking externally to say, well, okay, how do I get that? For me, when I'm consuming products I've imported to my home, I'm now thinking as I'm consuming them, is this the last time I'm ever going to have this? Because one of two things is going to occur. I can't get it anymore, or the company I get it from, or the company manufacturers it, are going to go out of business. Because of small and medium businesses. So there's certain things I truly enjoy, and that now I'm worried about, can I get it? Can I get it locally? So a lot of people are starting to look around to say, what other sources are available if I can't get what I like? A lot of people are thinking locally in terms of consumption, but on the other hand, they're also saying, if the manufacturer here locally of that good goes out of business, and I like that good and I rely on that good, where else can I get it from? And no offense to any of my students listening in terms of specific countries, during this whole crisis, some countries have reacted very well, and other countries perhaps not as well. And there are certain suspicions and concerns about products coming from different countries as to their quality and viability. And we're going to have a lot of folks, I hate to use the term xenophobic, but we're going to be very cautious going forward as to who and where we do business with. We're going to rethink that. From a comfort level, from a hygiene level, from a reliability level. There's going to be some rethinking of strategic partnerships.
That would mean for a company like Audi, a manufacturer of a special product which was so far distributed by reseller channels, and now the consumer cannot get this product anymore as he was used to it before, and he starts to get searching. And also, like the question before regarding the marketing, would that mean for Audi, concentrate on Google Ads, try to get closer to the customer, try to sell it directly, because right now...
Or work with centralized retailers. Can you hear me okay? Working with centralized retailers, let's say like the Carrefour chain, that you know the volume of distribution is such, and they're considered essential workers, that you can get the product through to the consumer that way. So perhaps rationalizing the value chain, taking away the supply chain optimization, the parties you don't think are going to be there or allowed to be there, which unfortunately a lot of small and medium businesses may not be able to survive this. But the ones that have the volume and the infrastructure may be a help supporting you. Eve, I see Eve wanting to pop in there.
No, I'm just listening.
Because it says speaking, I didn't know if you wanted to join in. So from that perspective, it's rationalizing who do I want to work with. And that might be cutting some global partners out, Or it might be including some global partners if you don't believe from a distribution perspective your local distribution is going to get you there anymore. Case in point, face masks. Okay? All of a sudden, you go from, you don't need one, you need one, make your own, here's some supplied. Every couple of days the situation is changing, and if you are a company relying on this, we were joking earlier, a meeting this morning about, KU Leuven face masks. If you require to have these objects, who do you rely on? You start rationalizing, rethinking, if I need this and I have to get this, and I'm not sure I can get this locally and or globally, I start rethinking, who do I want to work with? Who's coming up with a good offer that's credible, reliable, and it delivers?
That is the point. It always impresses me the small effects which have to be influenced. I don't mean the crisis. I really mean the small effects in our whole daily life and the influence which cannot be observed directly. I'm so happy about the changes which we observe by usage of technology and possibilities, which were always there but never used. And I would like to smoothly go to the end. I would like to continue for 1 more hour, but sadly, we can't. Thank you, and Alea and Eve, for this wonderful session. It was really, really nice. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to do it.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Evening to everyone. A good day to everyone. Stay healthy and safe.